Thank you for attending today. The webinar is on preparing for Energy Star National version 3.2. This is Dean Gamble speaking. I'm the technical manager for the Energy Star Single Family New Homes program. Let me briefly run through the agenda and then we'll just jump right in because we actually have a lot to cover today. I'll start with a brief summary of the new federal tax credits, which I know is driving a lot of the interest in National version 3.2. Next, I want to provide a general overview of the Energy Star Single Family New Homes program, including the key features that are applicable to nearly every certified home. And finally, we'll do a deeper dive into National version 3.2, what differentiates that from other versions, and how to prepare. So let's kick things off with the new 45L federal tax credits for builders of energy efficient homes. You've probably heard something about them. I think that might be why you're here today in part. As part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Section 45L new energy efficient home credit has been updated and extended through 2032. For eligible homes and apartments that are acquired on or after January 1st of 2023, the tax credit is specifically tied to certification to an eligible version of the relevant Energy Star or DOE Zero Energy Ready Homes program requirements. So unlike the last iteration of the tax credit, which in recent times was retroactively extended at the end of each year, this new tax credit actually lets you plan ahead, which is nice. Now, the tax credit applies to single-family homes, multifamily homes, and manufactured homes, but today we're just going to be focused on single-family homes, which covers detached, new single-family homes, duplexes, and townhouses. For those that are certified to the minimum eligible program version, which varies by program, year, and location, a $2,500 tax credit is available for Energy Star certification, and double that amount, $5,000, is available for certification to DOE's Zero Energy Ready Homes program. So let's talk about what we mean by minimum eligible program version. That is a key term. For Energy Star, the minimum eligible program version for the tax credit is determined relative to the dwelling's acquisition date, not the permit date. This can be a little bit confusing because it's different than for plain old Energy Star certification, where version enforcement is based on permit date. It is also different from DOE's Zero Energy Ready Homes program. Now, this is a rule that Congress decided when drafting the legislation, not us, so unfortunately, it's not something that we can change. The minimum eligible program versions for the tax credit is key information that you need to know as a builder or as a rater, and you can find that in tables on the Energy Star website at the link that is shown here. Currently, those tables are available for acquisitions made in 2023 through 2026, and we'll look at those in just a minute. Finally, and this is something that has confused some partners, know that the minimum eligible version required for the tax credit can be more rigorous and more stringent than what is required just for Energy Star certification. So let's look at those tables. In 2024, for most states, the minimum version that's required for the tax credit for single-family new homes is National version 3.1. In Florida, Oregon, and Washington, a home can earn the tax credit via either the national version or a state-specific version. And in California and Hawaii, regional program versions apply. Beginning in 2025, there are two big changes for single-family new homes. Number one, the transition from National version 3.1 to National version 3.2. And then number two, Florida, Oregon, and Washington moved from their regional program versions to the National version 3.2 program requirements. So you can see that for single-family homes, almost everyone steps up to National version 3.2 for the tax credit in 2025. This is a key reason why so many partners are preparing for version 3.2 right now. That's one reason we wanted to have the webinar today. The exceptions are for California and Hawaii, where there are no changes relative to 2024. And then for 2026, National version 3.2 will continue to be the minimum eligible version in most states. In California and Hawaii, the minimum eligible version will advance to the latest applicable version of those regional program requirements. So California version 3.2, 3.4, and then Pacific version 3.2. Okay, so let's do a quick quiz. Let's say that we have a home in Texas that is permitted in January of 2025, and it's acquired in August of 2025. What is the minimum program version that must be used for a home that is just pursuing certification, like they just want the Energy Star label on the house? And what is the minimum program version if they instead want to step up to the 45L federal tax credit? I realize you might not have all this memorized, so I've included a little cheat sheet here. In the lower left is the table of applicable program requirements, versions, and revisions for just certification, if you want to put the label on the house. And on the right is the minimum versions eligible for the tax credit for acquisitions in 2025. So is the answer A, that National version 3.1 can be used for both certification and for the tax credit in this particular example? Or is it B, that National version 3.1 can be used for certification, but if you want the tax credit, you have to step up to National version 3.2? Or is it C, that you must use version 3.2 for both certification and the tax credit? Okay, I think that poll has been launched. I see that people are weighing in here. Just wait a minute. Only 42% of you have voted, so I know that some people are still thinking this over. Just gonna wait till we at least top 50%. Looking pretty good. Okay. At least a majority of you weighed in. And the correct answer here is B, which most of you guessed. So in this case, in Texas in 2025, this particular house could be certified under version 3.1. That means the label would just go on the house. It's officially certified. It receives all the recognition that any other Energy Star home would get. But if you want to go to the tax credit, then you have to be pursuing version 3.2 instead, a more stringent version, if you want that federal tax credit. So the majority of people got that right. So I'm glad that you're internalizing this. That's an important distinction that had tripped up some partners. So that's what I want to share today about the tax credit. If you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to us. However, all we can really do is relay information that has already been provided in the legislation or by the IRS. In many cases, we'll have to direct you to consult with a tax professional. Okay, with that context, let's get into the details of the Energy Star Single Family New Homes program. And what I want to cover in this section are the requirements that apply to all versions except those in the Pacific and the Caribbean. Let's start with the eligibility requirements. New single-family, multifamily, and manufactured homes are all eligible to earn the Energy Star using customized program requirements for each sector. And across all those sectors, to earn the Energy Star label, a home or apartment must be independently certified to meet our rigorous energy efficiency requirements. Nearly 3,000 builders, developers, and manufactured housing plants are Energy Star partners today, including all of the nation's 20 largest home builders. Over 190,000 new homes were Energy Star certified in 2023 alone, and more than 9% of all US homes built in 2022, the latest data that we have, were Energy Star certified. So you're in good company. Now let's talk about the building types eligible to participate specifically in the Energy Star Single Family New Homes program. They include detached single family homes, detached two-family homes such as duplexes, and townhouses. So if you're building any of these home types, then this webinar is for you. If you're involved with multifamily buildings or manufactured homes, then you might want to look into one of those other two programs. So that was easy. Next, let's discuss the key elements of the Single Family New Homes program requirements. Here they are. If you haven't seen them before, we can fit them on one page, and they're broken into 4 categories: efficiency and testing, comfort, air quality, and durability. So let's review these one by one. I'm going to start out with an energy rating, which includes third-party inspections. Simply put, you don't know what you don't inspect. By some estimates, more than 80 individuals representing over 24 trades are going to touch a home during its construction. Site supers have a lot to keep track of, and they won't always have the bandwidth to look at every single one of these details. And it certainly won't be the code inspector who's paying attention to all this as well. And so that's where a third-party inspector called an energy rater comes in. It's a critical extra set of eyes that should help reduce the liability of a builder by keeping tabs on these things. In addition to visual inspections, is the rater who has the equipment and the expertise to measure key features like infiltration, duct leakage, ventilation airflows, and installed HVAC performance. Hopefully you're already familiar with ratings, but if you're not, here are the very basic steps as they apply to Energy Star. The third-party inspector, again called the rater, completes a preliminary energy model and Energy Star design review before construction even begins. During construction, the rater completes 2 on-site inspections to complete what is called an Energy Rating Index or ERI rating, and to verify additional Energy Star specific requirements. Finally, the rater completes the energy model. They register the home with their Home Certification Organization, or HCO, and they provide documentation of certification to the builder. So doing an energy rating is an easy but critical first step. Every builder can, and I think should be doing an energy rating, otherwise you're just flying blind. Fortunately, we know that a lot of builders have already taken this first step. More than 360,000 homes were rated in 2023 alone. Those were almost entirely new construction. Now, as I mentioned, these ratings result in an energy rating index, or ERI score, that represents the relative efficiency of a home. This is a scale roughly 0 to 100. A high score represents a home that uses a lot of energy, meaning it's not efficient. And like golf, the lower the score, the better. A low ERI rating means the home uses less energy and is relatively more efficient. So for context, an ERI of 100 is equivalent to a home that meets the 2006 International Energy Conservation Code. And a score of 0 represents a home that uses no more energy than it produces. That means you can only achieve a score of 0 if the home has on-site power production like PV panels. In other words, an energy rating is simply an assessment. While it's a critical first step, it doesn't necessarily mean that the home is efficient. For example, a terrible home can also get an energy rating. It might get a score of 130. That's better than not knowing it's 130, but it doesn't necessarily make a good home. Because of that, the Energy Star program goes beyond just doing an energy rating. We lock in above code performance. And in most states, we do this using what we call an Energy Star ERI target for each home. And this is important. Energy rating software will automatically determine this target for each home. Let me quickly show you how that's done. Once the house pursuing certification is entered into rating software, the software automatically creates a target home with the same key architectural features like foundation type, conditioned floor area, number of stories, and orientation, as well as the same geographic location and fuel type. Next, the rating software applies what we call the Energy Star reference design to that target home. The Energy Star reference design is a prescriptive set of efficiency measures covering the house from top to bottom: insulation levels, infiltration, duct location, equipment appliance efficiency, etc. Step 3, the rating software calculates the Energy Star ERI target, which is the ERI that results from the target home configured with that Energy Star reference design. Once the ERI target has been calculated, builders then select efficiency measures that meet or beat that ERI target. Note that this is the same process that the Zero Energy Ready Homes program uses to define its performance target as well. So for example, let's say that you model a home you want to certify, and the software calculates that the Energy Star ERI target for that specific home is a 52. You then have to select efficiency measures that meet or beat 52 to meet for this particular home to be certified. So none of those Energy Star reference design measures are mandatory for hitting the target, but if you're not going to use those, then you have to select other measures to compensate. So what are the typical Energy Star ERI targets? That depends on the program version. Our goal is to define targets that produce savings of at least 10% relative to code-built homes. For most states, single-family new homes, National Version 3.1 is in effect. These are the states shown in blue. It requires an ERI target of about 55 to 65 for most homes. National Version 3.2, which is what we're focused on today, is implemented in states that have adopted the 2021 ICC or an equally rigorous code. Those are shown in yellow. Additional states will move to National 3.2 if they adopt the 2021 code, as we discussed. It will also be required in most states starting in 2025 if you want to step up to the tax credit. Now, 3.2 has a more stringent ERI target of about 45 to 55 for most homes. And finally, some states have customized performance targets due to unique codes or building practices, and those are shown in orange, for example, California and Hawaii. So that is the foundation of the program, above code performance that's demonstrated through a third-party rating. If you're already doing that as a builder, you're more than halfway towards certification. On top of the efficiency that's locked in, we're just adding a handful of extra features. We're adding 3 comfort features. The first is a complete thermal enclosure system, and that means a few things. First, having high enough insulation R values and high-performing windows to be effective. That's what we call the thermal backstop, and I'll talk more about that later in the presentation, so remember that term. Second, it means achieving grade 1 insulation installation. This helps a builder get the R value that they paid for and reduces the chances of comfort complaints. Third, it means air barriers and air sealing to help the insulation work properly, reduce hot and cold air from intruding into the home, and reduces pests. And fourth, it means using strategies to reduce thermal bridging in your walls. The second of the comfort features is properly sized and installed HVAC systems. Unfortunately, this just cannot be taken for granted. Studies have shown that there's improper airflow in nearly 50% of systems, and incorrect refrigerant charge in 60 to 80% of systems. So pretty shocking statistics. You can't just assume that everything is okay. You actually need to check this. Now, there are a few ways to accomplish this in the Energy Star program, but the best way is through HVAC grading. That's a series of 5 tasks that the rater completes, resulting in a grade for the HVAC system, either 1 meaning great, 2 meaning okay, or 3 meaning not great. You could say bad. For Energy Star, you have to achieve grade 1 or 2. The third comfort feature is bedrooms that are comfort balanced. You know, homeowners spend more time in their bedrooms than almost any other room, and when bedroom doors are closed, as they often are, air can become trapped. So it's not enough to supply conditioned air to each bedroom. That air also needs a path back to the HVAC system. There's a variety of ways to create a return air pathway, such as a transfer grill, jump ducts, dedicated returns, or this is not as recommended, but something maybe even as simple as undercut doors. You know, there's a builder who we worked with for over 10 years who resisted this particular feature tooth and nail. They just didn't believe in the value of it. And then at some point, their in-house HVAC design team realized their HVAC systems just would not work as expected without the return air pathway. And so what they ended up incorporating this feature into all of their homes nationwide, even when they weren't doing Energy Star. So this is actually important. We're adding, in addition to those comfort features, 4 air quality features, which are more valuable now than ever before. Because we're building a high performance home, we're going to build it tight and ventilate it right. And that means that we'll add a whole house fresh air system to deliver a consistent amount of air into the home. There's a variety of options to do this, from a bath fan with a special control to an inline supply fan, all the way up to something like an energy or heat recovery ventilator. All of those are acceptable. But the point is, the system is going to have control over the air that enters the home instead of leaving it up to the whims of Mother Nature. This is now required by code in nearly half of all states anyways, but if it isn't required, it's really something you should be doing regardless for the health and the comfort of your home buyers. So that was bringing fresh air in. The other half of the air quality equation is taking the bad air out. And so we'll add vented exhaust fans in the kitchen and in the full baths. Maybe you already know that cooking creates contaminants like formaldehyde, fine particulate matter, excessive water vapor. You're really kicking up a lot of bad stuff into the air. There's a reason, if you think about it, that commercial kitchens have enormous range hoods with huge rooftop fans. And the home, range hoods that are installed in recirculation mode just blow those contaminants back in your face. So it might look good, but it's not really doing much for air quality. So we want those range hoods to be installed with ducts that go to the outdoors to get those contaminants completely out of the home. In some cases, they also have to meet sound limits. Moving on, each Energy Star home and apartment includes a MERV 6 or better filter and the heating and cooling system, which is going to remove contaminants from the air as it passes through, and it has to be properly installed so that the air goes through the filter rather than around it. So that is pretty straightforward. And the fourth air quality feature is combustion safety, which comes in a few different flavors. Most of our partners use power vented or direct vent appliances, or just use electric appliances that avoid the combustion altogether. Other options include keeping the combustion appliances outside the home's pressure boundary or having the rater do combustion safety testing. Whichever strategy you use as a builder, this is really just a question of due diligence to keep home buyers safe. And finally, we have one key durability feature, the water management system, which basically means proper flashing to keep bulk moisture draining away from your home. In other words, don't tuck your raincoat into your underwear. That is sound advice throughout your life, and it applies to buildings too. This is simply a list of details for the builder to implement. It's not a checklist to fill out. And almost all of this is baked into code, so it's really not asking for much more than builders should already be doing. But we know it's super important for high performance homes because leaks and other moisture issues can be so damaging. And in fact, many of our partners go above and beyond these minimum requirements already. For example, by having third-party assessments. So that's it. You can fit the Energy Star features on one page. It's an energy rating that locks in above code performance. That gets you halfway there with 3 added comfort features, 4 indoor air quality features, and a set of durability details. So ask yourself, which of these features would you tell your client to leave out, for example? Which would you leave out of your own home? Hopefully none of them. And just how hard and expensive would it be to add these features after the time of construction? Okay, that's that section. At this point, you already know 90% of what you need to do to comply with National Version 3.2 because the requirements we just reviewed are applicable to almost every version of the Single Family New Homes program. Now we'll get into what differentiates National Version 3.2 from earlier versions and how you can prepare to meet it. Let me take a little breather here and do a poll. I just want to take your pulse with a poll question. So tell me, as of today, how familiar are you with National Version 3.2? A, is it stranger to me? This is the first time I'm hearing of it. B, we're generally acquainted. I have a basic understanding. Or C, we're best buds. I'm already assessing whether homes comply. All right, so I'm going to let you weigh in here. All right, people are quick to the buzzer here. This is an easy question compared to the last one. At least 70% of you are still engaged with the webinar because you voted, so that's awesome. It looks like we have a resounding answer here, which is B, we're generally acquainted. I have a basic understanding. Maybe a third of you or so are already assessing homes, which is great. And for 10% of you or so, this is the first time that you're hearing about it. I'm glad that you have attended the webinar. That's great to have you join us. For those 10% who aren't familiar with National Version 3.2, the good news here is that there are only 2 differences between National Version 3.2 and the prior versions like National Version 3.1. Number 1, there is a more stringent ERI target. And number 2, there's a more stringent thermal backstop. That's it. Those are the only 2 differences between National Version 3.2 and the prior version. We talked a little bit about the Energy Star ERI target and the thermal backstop a bit in the last section, but now let's get into more detail about these. And we'll start with the more stringent ERI target. So a little table setting here. This is a chart of residential energy efficiency standards over the last 20 years or so. The 2006 International Energy Conservation Code, or IECC, essentially kicked off the modern era of residential energy codes, and that was followed 3 years later by the 2009 IECC. That's around the time that we developed version 3.0 of the Energy Star Single Family New Homes program. Some of the old timers on the webinar probably remember that, and the specs were meant to be at least 10% better than that 2009 model code. 3 years later, the 2012 IECC came out, so we released version 3.1 to again stay at least 10% better than that model code. The performance in the 2015 and 2018 codes kind of petered out, and so version 3.1 continued to work pretty well in response to that. And then along came the 2021 IECC, representing another significant step forward. As a result, the National Version 3.1 program requirements no longer achieved meaningful savings relative to homes built to this latest model code, and that's why we developed a new version of the national program requirements, which is how we arrived at National Version 3.2. So each time a meaningfully more stringent model code has been released, we've done the same thing with version 3.0 and then version 3.1, and now with version 3.2. In the last section, we discussed how the Energy Star reference design is used to determine the Energy Star ERI target for each home that's pursuing certification. So let me show you. Here are the key enclosure measures included in the National Version 3.2 Energy Star reference design. The cells that are shaded in green are those that have been upgraded relative to the 2021 IECC baseline. So we start with insulation levels that are aligned with the 2021 IECC prescriptive path, achieving grade 1 insulation installation. That means it's properly installed insulation. Plus windows and doors that are aligned with the latest Energy Star product specs at the time that we were developing National Version 3.2, and infiltration of 3ACH50 in all locations. Now let's talk about it's going to be difficult to hit that target without several key features, namely the 2021 ICC insulation levels or equivalent, ducts and conditioned space, and an instant gas water heater or heat pump water heater. So you should start with the assumption that you'll need to include these three measures, and then if you don't want to use one or more of them, know that you're going to have to work pretty hard to avoid them. So let's explore trade-offs a little bit further, just to give you a little bit of intuition about this. So first, I modeled a 2,400 square foot, 2-story home with a slab on grade and electric heating in Phoenix. So I'm going to give you a hot climate example here. I started by modeling a home with the same features as the version 3.2 Energy Star reference design. So those are the same features that you just saw a minute ago. And lo and behold, the Energy Star ERI target for this home is a 50, which is squarely in that 45 to 55 range. And not surprisingly, the home that I modeled achieved a 49. Again, because it basically has the same features as the reference design. So that would be one way to hit that reference design. Just use this, hit the ERI target. Just use the same features as in the reference design. But let's say you didn't love that. Next, I tried tweaking the insulation levels. Instead of 49, I dropped down to 38. But I improved the window performance a little bit to 0.32. And I backed off the infiltration to 4ACH50. This worked fine. I was still able to hit the target of 50 with a little bit of room to spare. Next, I stuck with that modified shell, but I upgraded the heat pump to 18 SEER. So I was going for a high efficiency HVAC system. In exchange, I backed off the water heater from a heat pump to electric resistance. And I took a default grade 3 for HVAC rating. So I wasn't going to evaluate the insulation at all. That worked as well. I got a 48. My third package stuck with a modified shell, but it upgraded the water heater to Energy Star levels. That allowed me to take grade 3 HVAC again, the default, plus avoid any upgrade to the HVAC equipment itself. And finally, I invested in grade 1 HVAC, which allowed me to back off on the windows, the infiltration even further, and use the electric resistance water heater with room to spare. So HVAC rating gets you a lot of points in a hot climate where it's running all the time. Okay, now let's look at a mixed climate. This is a conditioned basement home with a gas furnace in Baltimore. Using the same features as the version 3.2 Energy Star reference design, I get a 51 for this particular house, which is just a hair better than the target of 52. Next, I tried tweaking the insulation levels again. Instead of R60, I backed off to R49. Instead of R20 plus R5 continuous insulation in the walls, I backed off to just R21 in the wall cavity. But I improved the window performance to 0.25 U factor. This worked fine, and I was still able to hit the 52 target. Next, I stuck with the modified shell, but I upgraded the furnace to 95 AFUE. In exchange, I backed off the infiltration to 3.5 ACH50, and I took the default grade 3 for HVAC rating. That worked too. My third package stuck with the modified shell, but it upgraded the water heater to Energy Star levels. That allowed me to still back off on the infiltration a little bit and take the grade 3 default for HVAC rating. And finally, I stuck with that modified shell, but I backed off on the AC a little bit, and I used grade 1 HVAC instead. And finally, let's take a look at a cold climate. This is a conditioned basement home with a gas furnace in St. Paul. So using the same features as the version 3.2 reference design, I get a 49, which is just a hair better than the target of 50. Next, I tried tweaking the insulation levels again. So similar to Baltimore, I backed off from R60 to R49 in the ceiling, and I backed off to R21 in the walls. I improved the windows to 0.25 U factor, and I upgraded the foundation wall insulation to R21. This worked fine. I was still able to hit that 50 target. Next, I stuck with the modified shell, but I upgraded the furnace to 96 AFUE. In exchange, I backed off the infiltration a little bit to 3.25, and I took the default grade 3 for HVAC rating. That worked too. My third package stuck with the modified shell, but upgraded the water heater to Energy Star levels. That allowed me to still back off on the infiltration a little bit and take the grade 3 HVAC. And then finally, I stuck with the modified shell, but I backed off on the infiltration a bit, and I used the grade 1 HVAC installation instead. So you can see with all of these examples that you do have some flexibility to adjust things at the margins, but I think you'll find that you can't leave out key features like ducts and conditioned space unless you're really going to double down on everything else. Okay, so hopefully that gives you just a little bit of intuition, if you didn't have any before, on the ERI targets for version 3.2 and how you can still mix and match measures to hit those targets. So the more rigorous ERI target is the first difference between National 3.2 and the prior versions, and the second key difference between National version 3.2 and version 3.1 is a more stringent thermal backstop. As we discussed in the last section, one of the components of a complete thermal enclosure system is this thermal backstop. This is the minimum amount of insulation and the minimum window performance that has to be met in order for the home to be certified. So regardless of how good the ERI is, you can't have an enclosure that's worse than this and still certify the home. But a home can trade off between ceiling, wall, and foundation insulation, windows, and door performance to meet this thermal backstop. Now, more precisely, the thermal backstop can be defined by a single number for a particular house, which is the area-weighted U factor for the entire enclosure. You simply multiply the U factor for each assembly by its area, and you sum those numbers up. You'll sometimes see this number referred to as the building UA value. Now, I know that UA is a little bit geeky, so I just want to quickly show you some examples to help you understand the concept. These calculations were done on a 2,400 square foot two-story home with 15% window area to floor area ratio. And let's start with windows and show you a couple examples. When we say UA, we literally mean multiplying the U value, or 0.35 in this case, by the area, or 360 square feet, to get the UA value of 126. Like ERI scores, the lower the better. So you can see that as we improve the window, the UA gets lower. Now pay attention to how much the UA is changing when we improve the window U value from 0.35 to 0.3 and then down to 0.25. The change in UA is 18, and that's a big change because sadly windows have the equivalent of very low R values. So small improvements to the window make a big difference in the UA. Now let's look at walls. We're doing the exact same calculations here. All I want to point out is the change in UA going from R13 to R15 in the wall has about the same impact as improving the windows from 0.35 to 0.30. You can also see that going from R13 to R15 in the wall has about twice the impact as going from R19 to R21 in the wall. In other words, diminishing returns as you increase the insulation. And finally, let's take a look at ceilings. Insulation levels are pretty high to begin with, so increasing the R value in the ceiling even further has a pretty modest impact on UA. In short, if you want to improve your UA, you'll get the most bang for your buck from improving the windows first, and then the walls, and then the ceilings. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So what are the thermal backstops of the Energy Star program? Under National version 3.1 of the program, the thermal backstop is tied to 100% of the UA of the 2009 IECC prescriptive path. For home certified using version 3.2, the thermal backstop is more stringent. It's aligned with the 2021 IECC prescriptive levels. For homes that are permitted before January 1st of 2025 and certified using 3.2, a thermal backstop of 105% of the UA from the 2021 IECC is allowed. And then for homes that are permitted after that date, it drops down to 100% of the UA. If you're not familiar with the requirements of the 2021 IECC, I've listed them here along with the 2009 IECC prescriptive path with the changes shown in green. And I would kind of break these increases into three categories. In climate zones 1 and 2, I'd call them modest. The windows have gotten better, but I think it'll be sort of hard to find windows that are much worse than this today. In climate zone 2, there's a significant increase in ceiling insulation, but there's a lot of flexibility for trade-offs. The next group is climate zones 5 through 8, which I'd call moderate changes. The requirements are essentially the same for all 4 zones under the 2021 ICC. The 0.3 windows that are there, they're probably what most of our partners are already using today or close to using today. The R60 ceiling is a significant jump, but from relatively high levels to begin with, which means a smaller thermal impact. I'd say the same deal for the walls. And the foundation insulation increases, they're not nothing, but they're not unheard of either. And then the third group is climate zone 3 and 4, which I'd call major. The windows are not very noteworthy, but the wall insulation levels will require a change to the assembly. Plus, there's the addition of slab insulation in climate zone 3 for the first time. So if this looks a little bit imposing to you, then let's discuss how the UA trade-offs can be used to make this a little bit more achievable. Okay, so let me start with the modest group. Let me get the slides to advance here. So let's start with the modest group. Climate zone 1, I'm not even going to talk about because for all practical purposes, the 2021 ICC is the same as the 2009 ICC. And climate zone 2 is not that different, just an increase in ceiling insulation and better windows. So one option for meeting the 2021 IECC thermal enclosure, of course, would be to just use the higher attic insulation of R49. But let's say that you want to use that UA trade-off option. What might that look like? Well, one easy alternative would be to improve your windows and doors. Here I've downgraded back to R30 ceiling insulation, but I've added insulated doors and 0.3 U value windows. That not only meets the 2021 ICC UA, it's actually 9% better than it. You see that? So the 2021 ICC UA for this particular house is about 453, and the alternative I just showed you is 412, lower is better. So this would be perfectly fine. That's why I think most partners are not going to have a lot of trouble hitting the 2021 ICC UA in climate zones 1 and 2. Now let's move on to the moderate group, climate zones 5 through 8. Now in the 2021 ICC, the thermal enclosure is identical in these locations except for the floor insulation being a bit higher in climate zone 7 and 8. So climate zone 5 is a good representative example. Let's take a look at a home with a conditioned basement. So in climate zone 5, the 2021 ICC has increased requirements almost across the board. Again, one option would be to just use these higher levels and you'd be all set. But let's say you want some trade-off options. First, let's say that you're certifying a home with version 3.2, but it's permitted before 2025. That means you can use the less stringent interim thermal backstop. And you can do that with maybe R49. Say you're not ready for R60, but you can do that much. You can do R21 in the walls, but not continuous insulation yet. And you can bump your windows down to 0.29, and you can upgrade your basement wall to R19. This wouldn't hit the 2021 ICC UA. It would actually be about 4% worse. But because the home is permitted before 2025, that would be good enough to certify the home. So that's a good stepping stone. Now, if the home is certified under version 3.2, but it's permitted after 2025, then you're going to have to do a little bit better. So say you're okay with upgrading the attic to R60, but you don't want to add any continuous wall insulation, and so you stick with a high density batt product. If you use the same insulation in the basement walls and you make another modest window upgrade, you're there. You've just squeaked by. What if R60 is a step too far? You want to go back down to R49. Instead, you're going to add a little bit more to the 2x6 wall assembly and go with R23. You pair that with the same modest window upgrade, and that also works. And let me give you one more option. I mentioned earlier how much windows can improve your UA. So what happens if you invest in windows with a U value of 0.25? These aren't too common today, but that level can be achieved with a double pane window using existing technology. And we actually expect windows like this to become a lot more common in the next few years. With such a good window, you can stick with R49 in the attic, R21 in the walls, and you can actually downgrade back to R13 in the basement, and you're still there. Okay, now let's look at the final group, which has some major upgrades, climate zone 3 and 4. Let's start with climate zone 3 and use a slab on grade home. The two notable things about the 2021 ICC in this location is the upgrade to a 2x6 wall assembly and the addition of slab insulation. So if you can incorporate those two changes, you're all set. What if not? Well, let's start with another interim solution for homes permitted before 2025. If you're not ready for 2x6 walls or you're not ready for slab insulation, but you can get a little bit of continuous insulation on the 2x4 wall, as some of our partners are already doing in places like Dallas, then you're already pretty good to go. You're just scraping by at 5% worse than the 2021 ICC, but that is good enough for the time being. Once you hit 2025, you have a few paths that you can take. The first is to stick with the enhanced 2x4 wall assembly, but tweak your window 2025 might be as easy as a 2x6 wall with high density insulation and a tweak to your windows, and you are good to go. After 2025, if you're able to do highly insulated 2x6 wall cavities and stick with the R60 in the attic, then a modest window upgrade will get you the rest of the way there. And again, if you can really push the window performance, in this case to 0.24, then that makes for a pretty conventional ceiling and 2x6 wall assembly, with a little room to spare, I might add. So my scenario is my final option used very efficient windows, typically a U factor of 0.24 or 0.25. And I'm really encouraging our partners to take a close look at windows, particularly for mixed and cold climates. While windows with this level of performance may have been rare in the past, I think that's a market that will quickly evolve. Oops, okay. That's because a new product specification for Energy Star residential windows, doors, and skylights went into effect last October. And I think that's going to increase the availability of efficient double and triple pane windows. That's because the Energy Star window spec has a really high market penetration. The most recent estimate from 2020 was that 84% of windows shipped in the US were Energy Star certified. Here's the new spec. You can see that the yellow region, which roughly matches Climate Zone 4, requires a U factor of 0.25 or lower. And in the blue region, which corresponds with the northern half of the US, the U factor has to be between 0.22 and 0.26. So I encourage you to ask your window suppliers about this and see if they have new options, particularly in the 0.24 and 0.25 range. What I've heard from our windows expert at EPA is that those will probably be double pane, not triple pane windows, so easy to drop into your designs. Okay, it is time for a quick pop quiz. First up, hopefully you've been paying attention here, what's the key difference between version 3.1 and 3.2? Is it option A, you have to meet a more stringent ERI target? Is it option B, you have to meet a more stringent ERI target and a new thermal backstop? Or is it option C, battery storage is required in every home? So I'm gonna just wait here until we have a majority of people have chimed in. Percentages are going up very quickly. Everyone's doing a good job. Okay, more than 2/3 of you have responded, and almost all of you got the right answer, which is B. For version 3.2, you have to meet a more stringent ERI target and a new thermal backstop. Okay, so great, you're definitely paying attention here. Next question, what's the typical range of ERI targets for the national version 3.2? Is it A, about 0 to 10 for every house? Is it B, exactly 50 for every home? Or is it C, about 45 to 55 for most homes? Okay, a lot of quick responses here. All right, over 60% of you have responded. I'll let some of you think about it for another minute or two. Very good, very good. Okay, almost 3/4 of you have voted at this point, and almost all of you got the correct answer, which is that version 3.2 has an ERI target of about 45 to 55 for most homes. Very good. And final question here, which homes have to meet a thermal backstop equal to 100% of the 2021 IECC UA? So a little bit trickier here. Is it A, all homes certified using national version 3.2? Is it B, all homes that are certified using national version 3.2 if permitted on or after January of 2025? Or is it all homes certified using any version if permitted after January 1st, 2025? All right, I think people have to think about this one a little bit more. Half of the responses are in. All right, 2/3 of the responses. Let me wait just another minute. See if we can top 70%. Okay, great. Most of you answered. About 3/4 of you got the right answer, which is B. So for homes that are certified to version 3.2, if they're permitted after January 2025, they have to meet that 100% of the UA. If they're certified under version 3.2 but permitted before January 1st, 2025, then it's a slightly less stringent interim backstop. Good job. I think people are really paying attention. That's super encouraging. So that is basically what I have for you today. If you'd like to get started, here's what to do. Here's what to do next. You can download a one-page builder and developer fact sheet that reiterates a lot of this information. Next, click the link that's shown here. We'll send out the slides to find a rater and analyze how close your home plans are to achieving Energy Star. And finally, go ahead and sign our free partnership agreement. That makes you eligible to certify homes, so it's a great first step. Thank you so much for attending.